Hey guys, happy Juneteenth to everyone who is celebrating, and happy Extra Awareness Day to everyone who is just learning about this holiday. I think that it is incredibly important for all of us, whether we've been in this work for a long time or we are new to this space, to be always learning and acknowledging what we perhaps didn't know about our history. And this is where all of you come in a way that feels very personal to me, and I think is very personal to a lot of the folks who follow me on social media. And it has to do with Wilmington, North Carolina. As many of you know, Wilmington is a home away from home to all of us who worked on One Tree Hill for 187 episodes, and to so many of you who are incredible fans of the show, who have felt like it's your home away from home, like it's the place where everything's safe. Wilmington, for a time, was an incredibly safe community for a lot of people. It was historically a diverse community, and it became very unsafe. And the time period that I'm referencing is 1898. There was a horrific massacre in Wilmington. And the reason for this massacre was that Wilmington had a thriving Black community. The population of Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898 was actually 50% Black. And these residents were landowners and business owners. They had thriving businesses, a thriving cultural life, elected officials in federal government. This was a community that was doing really well, and that angered white supremacists. And I want to check the date here so that I get this exactly right. I took notes. I know none of you is surprised. It was the morning of November 10th, 1898, and a mob of 400 white supremacists came into town to burn down a newspaper called the Daily Record. The gentleman who owned it, his name was Alexander Manly. I'm just learning about Alexander now. I'd heard about the massacre, but didn't really know anything about it. I gotta say, being a resident of Wilmington, North Carolina for a decade, it's pretty erased from the history there. So learning about the massacre now, like I said, I've got a whole notes file open. And back to the story. 400 white supremacists came into town. They started with the Daily Record, as was so customary in areas in the South where white supremacists were terrorizing Black communities. They would burn down the newspapers they believed to be problematic. This was a conservative group of white supremacists who claimed that the Black people in Wilmington were being radical. Not so sure what wanting to live freely and equally is, what about that is radical, but not the point. The burning of the newspaper began an assault. It lasted for over 2 days. Over 60 people were murdered. And all of the democratically, locally elected government, people who had won their seats fair and square, were overthrown and replaced with white supremacists. Now, part of the reason that this massacre is so wild to historians, they call it the only successful coup d'etat in American history. It was an actual overthrowing of elected government. This is nuts, y'all. And it was buried. I read this article in The Atlantic by Adrienne LaFrance and Van Newkirk, and they said, there's a quote here that I think you should hear. What happened that day was nearly lost to history. For decades, the perpetrators were cast as heroes in American history textbooks. The Black victims were wrongly described as instigators. It took nearly a century for the truth of what had happened to begin to creep back into public awareness. Today, the old site of the Daily Record is this nondescript church parking lot, an ordinary-looking square of matted grass on a tree-lined street in historic Wilmington. The Wilmington Journal, a successor of sorts to the old Daily Record, stands in a white clapboard house across the street, but there is no evidence there of what happened in 1898. Now, here's where what's going on in Wilmington now comes in. Because what there is evidence of in Wilmington is the Confederacy. There are Confederate monuments all over the place. They are at 3rd and Market Street, 3rd and Dock Street. They are even in the Oakdale Cemetery. And they've been defended as historical markers to Wilmington and its history. But here's the thing, guys. Research shows us that these Confederate monuments went up between the years of 1911 and 1924. They were the passion projects of the Daughters of the Confederacy. These aren't monuments to anything. These are statues that were put up to intimidate incoming communities of Black people, to say, you're not welcome here, to say, this is Confederate territory. And we don't love this. Even the historic Wilmington Foundation supports the removal of these statues. Their director, Beth Rutledge, hey Beth, you're awesome, said these artworks do not represent the values of the city of Wilmington or this organization. It is our hope that the monuments will be relocated to a location where they may be preserved, interpreted, contextualized, and used expressly for educational purposes, rather than to continue to serve as visual public reminders of racial injustice. And there it is. This is what we, as the One Tree Hill family, are asking of Mayor Bill Saffo. We are asking you to take these statues down, put them in a museum, use them for education. It's incredibly important that we look the wrongdoings of our history in the face so that we don't repeat them. Tell people what we did wrong. They don't need to be up anymore, y'all. And I'm going to go ahead and join my dear sister Hillary Burton and many of my other castmates in promising Mayor Saffo that we will help you raise money for new monuments that celebrate the greatness of Wilmington, monuments that are meaningful to society there, and monuments that are welcoming for all of Wilmington's people. And before anybody who's watching this video says, but it's history and it's meaningful and why do they have to come down? I just want to put some things in context. The Confederacy lasted for 4.5 years. 4.5 years isn't that long. That's barely the term of one president. Do you know what lasted twice as long as the Confederacy? One Tree Hill. Our show was literally on the air for 9 years, y'all. Come on now. When we're talking about moments in history, let's not overdo it. So that's why all of us who have twice as much history in Wilmington as any of those god-awful statues do are committing to helping to raise money and tear them down, because this is something we can do to honor a community and to honor the people there who were wronged. This is something that we can do to help to correctly tell the stories of history, things that people tried to sweep under the rug. That's been done for far too long, especially where white supremacy is concerned. And we really believe as a community that loves Wilmington, that invested in Wilmington, that brought so much business into Wilmington and has had so many fans continue to go to Wilmington and love Wilmington. Let's make it better. So let's get these things down. Let's do something about it. You can sign the petition. The link is in my bio. And like I said, me, Hillary, and the gang, we're all committing to coming in. Maybe we'll throw once it's time, once we're all safe enough to gather in public together. Maybe we'll come to Thalian Hall and do a fundraiser. Who knows? But we're ready to go. So please join us. Please take an action like this one or another action on Juneteenth to celebrate in a way that is not just talking about the holiday, but actually showing up for people, showing up for what our real history should be and for what this real Independence Day means. That's it. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Thanks for staying tuned for this little history lesson. And I will put some resources in my stories, including that Atlantic article by Adrienne LaFrance and Van Newkirk. I'm so sorry I can't remember names all that well, but I wrote them down. And I'm going to put up the petition link, and I'm going to put up their article link, and I'm going to put up a couple of other things for you guys to know. Wilmington family, One Tree Hill family, we love you guys. Let's try to make that place we love a little bit better for everybody. Thanks.